we'll get into all of that. I'd like to begin our journey. Thank you again for taking a minute out. I want to begin our journey before we get into your life as a C-suite advisor, CTO entrepreneur, all the good stuff. 4 years ago, this pandemic was raging. We were trying to figure out how we're going to get through it, how it was going to affect us. How did you ultimately get through that COVID time period, and how did it change the way that you do things?
Um, it was really interesting because obviously, um, because I work in technology, I'm kind of used to working remotely.
Yeah,
Um, and so it was a sort of, on the one hand, it was probably the last push I needed to work fully remote, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Like I was already doing 2 days a week from home, and my team was already spread around the world a little bit. So in that regard, it didn't change much. The main change was kind of the environment around me, where I live in the banking district of London. Um, so suddenly I was literally going for a run on a Tuesday afternoon in the middle of the road all by myself. And it kind of felt like that, what's it, that Will Smith movie where he's on his own walking through this urban jungle. Like that was the sort of feeling you had around here because it was just deserted.
Yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the kids is curious and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer it?
Um, I mean, the simplest sentence I can think of is that I make people play nice together.
Okay.
But really, probably if you put it in the perspective of a third grader, think about planning your birthday party, right? You kind of, you want to write balloons, you want a chocolate cake, you want to throw a football around in the yard afterwards. And your buddy's going to bring balloons, but it turns out he brought the wrong colors. And the guy who was meant to bring the football brought a baseball because he thought you wanted to play catch. And rather than a chocolate cake, you ended up with a bag of brownies. I was like, you'll still have an okay birthday party, but it's not the one you wanted. Like my job is to make sure that you and your mates all agree on what the birthday is going to be like and make sure it happens.
So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Um, I'd like to sound really ambitious and great and say I was going to be a computer scientist in XYZ, but really I just wanted to be a football player. So soccer, because
Yeah.
I'm a European, right? So, actual feet and ball and kicking the thing.
Yeah. What's the best game you've ever witnessed with your own eyes? Best football match?
Um, as in European football,
Yeah.
or I mean,
Yeah,
I've not
Europe.
seen the Americans as well because they come out to London every now and again, so I've seen that piece. It was um, a Champions League game, which in Europe is the champions of each country.
Yeah.
They then play against each other in a separate league throughout the year. And so the team I support in Belgium, Anderlecht, which is based in the capital, they played AC Milan, which is a stellar team.
Yeah.
And I mean, we got our ass handed to us. I mean, we lost like 5-3, but I got to see some really incredible players do really incredible things on a football pitch. Like it's still, if you look at like highlights from the 90s, like some of the goals from that game are still in there as like
Wow.
all-time greatest goals.
That's
And so I
great.
got to witness them going against us, but I still got to see it.
Yeah. Well, Kansas City is actually considered, they call it the football capital of America or the soccer capital of America. We got a lot going on here. We got a great team. We're going to actually have World Cup games that are
Yeah.
going to be here. So, yeah. So, we're on the map, so to speak.
Yeah. Is it getting some traction? Because, way back when I was out there, which is that 2007, 2008, football, soccer wasn't really a thing.
Oh no, it's big now. Yeah, we got a stadium for our team sporting Kansas City. They got this thing called the Blue Cauldron, and that place is rocking. It's one of the best sporting events that I've seen, even over the Chiefs in this
All
town.
right.
That place, yeah, it's pretty nuts. So,
Nice.
um, and then we won the championship, I believe, in 2013, and we went crazy. So it was good for sure.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm curious, how did you acquire this business acumen that you have to help people navigate? Take me back to where you were born and raised and how these seeds were planted.
Sure. So I'm born and raised in Belgium, and the running joke is that the village I grew up in literally had more cows than people. Right? Like I'm like proper farm boy all the way out there.
Yeah.
And my mum's a teacher, and my dad was sort of a sales guy. Nothing sort of really businessy going on in our household. But then, by the time I got a job, so I did my computer science degree, and then I got a job as a software developer. Um, and I guess I lucked out. I was surrounded by people who kind of took an interest in me, kind of went like, "Hey, you're bright. You're going to make it. Blah blah blah. Let us help you." And so I was surrounded by people who kind of pushed me into these like. hey, don't just think about the software. Think about what this does for the company. Think about how this changes the behavior of the people around you, right? Think about team dynamics. Think about, I used to work for TomTom, the big satellite navigation. Um, and so I was kind of in this world of suddenly working for a company with offices all across the world, talking to people from everywhere about, well, hey, if we do this thing, how does that change your behavior? And sort of you get into crazy things around, well, it turns out that that Bentley drivers don't want McDonald's on their map because Bentley drivers don't go to McDonald's. So, you need to define some software now that deals with this for Bentley. And so you kind of start to pick up all these things. Then I got into a kind of a management consulting job, which was all about, okay, go into this business and help them restructure their software engineering process, make sure that kind of runs smoother, better, faster. And that's where I kind of had to pick up the kind of the bare bones of, okay, how does software play with the rest of the business? Then I ended up doing a finance degree. So I got all the corporate finance goodness of how do you raise money? Why does capital get allocated? How do you judge a project's value? How do you judge whether it's worth investing in? Um, and so I had that kind of sort of theoretical knowledge, and then I spent the last 10 years being a CTO in various companies, from the really small to the public companies here in London. And now an advisor kind of going, let me start giving back a bit, because that's really what's driving a lot of this. I was lucky that I was surrounded by people who took an interest and kind of gave me those opportunities. Yes, I run a business, I'm a consultant, but a part of it is also, I do outreach, I do mentorship, I do advisory for super early stage companies to kind of go, look, that next generation deserves those same chances.
So, who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your career?
It shifts and changes, and it's usually not very well known people. Like, I mean, I hope he ends up listening to this, and then if he does, Brian, you've been an absolute rock star for me. He was my manager at TomTom, who kind of really sort of openly went, I don't know half this stuff, but I'm going to put you out there and we're going to figure it out together. And I think just having someone who wanted to be both vulnerable, going like, look, yes, I'm older and in a more senior position, but I don't know all the answers. Let's go figure it out. I think that was really kind of a mental, like, yeah, that's something I want to be when I grow up.
So, of all the businesses that exist in the world, it's kind of like sports. There's this rise to prominence, and we all revere them. Your Amazons and Apples and all these companies. But what company business model do you admire the most?
I mean, I kind of admire the Warren Buffett way of thinking a lot. And I, we can talk about Berkshire Hathaway and why that does well, but it's the sort of the no fuss, no bullshit is like, look, I'm interested in buying good companies that do something I can understand, and I'm interested in buying them at a price that I think makes sense for what they do, right?
Yeah.
And like that strips away so much of the nonsense and so much of the hype and so much of the, whatever it is in AI these days or in technology evolution. It's like, hey, as a business, are you actually adding something to the world? And if so, are you doing that at a reasonable cost and for a reasonable price? And it's like, well, that level of insight is like, yeah, you've got it nailed down.
So, if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, interesting, who would it be? Who would you love to meet?
I mean, definitely Warren Buffett. I'd
Yeah.
definitely love to sit down with him and kind of poke around a bit at like, how do you even start thinking about that kind of problem? Equally, I'd love to meet some. It doesn't have to be one in particular, but some of the world leaders who are kind of going like, look, politicians generally, because on the one hand, they tend to be very um, a combination of both idealistic and opportunistic people. And I find that a very interesting juxtaposition because you can have all your ideals, but at the end of the day, you're only going to get elected and get a chance to do this if you're also opportunistic enough to grab the chance and kind of convince people to vote for you.
Yeah.
So it's that like that's great. How do you blend those two together?
Yeah. So, what is your motivation every day to do the work that you do? Because you have to give a lot of yourself to help your clients, but you also have to hold some back to evolve as a human. What is that collective gas for you?
Um, I think for me, it's really the helping people element. It's like yes, I'm an engineer and I love the kind of the mental challenge of going, let me go and figure out this problem and figure out this system and see how we optimize this. But at the end of the day, to the point we made about the third graders, I really care about did I help these people in a reasonable way? There's a sort of professional ethos there of like, I want to make sure I do the right thing for you. And I think Like some of the things I love most, if I sort of was to look back, is people who worked for me that I kind of hired, took under my wing. They're now CTOs in their own right. And it's like, do you know what? I enjoy your success because I know somewhere along that journey, I gave you something that helped you move forward.
So what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Say yes.
Yeah.
There's a great paper I was reading the other day, which they did this study in the kind of a simulated world, um, and they basically went, people have a distribution of skill, you might call it skill, luck, talent, whatever, and they have a distribution of opportunities that gets thrown in front of them, good and bad, but your skill is kind of, that gives you the good or bad outcome, but there's slight variation. And it turns out that the main driver for a kind of overall great outcome for a person has a lot more to do with the amount of opportunities they take than it has to do with their inherent skill.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense, right? If you say no to everything, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're not going to get there. If you say yes to everything, you're going to look out at some point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that kind of like, just say yes more.
Yeah. So John Lennon fell in love with Yoko Ono because there was a exhibit that she had. There was a ladder. You went up, the painting was on the ceiling, and there was this spyglass that came down. And when you went up, you walked up the ladder, and right in the middle it said the word yes. And he fell in love with her.
Yeah, and
That
it's
was
just such a great thing.
absolutely, that's how it all began. So of everything that you've done up to this point in your career, in your life, what are you the proudest of?
It's definitely seeing the trajectory of some of the people that I kind of worked with, coached, helped over the year. Like that's something I'm really proud of. Kind of seeing that go through. Like um, the it's that kind of that giving back element of like, look, I like that this happens. So to give you a concrete example, I'm an advisor to a kind of an accelerator in the ed tech space. So education and technology, and how does technology help education get better, right? And so every year, 4 or 5 companies come through that accelerator, and I end up spending a month with them as a coach to go, hey, let's look at your business. What are you trying to do? And these are all super early stage companies, usually don't have much money, not much of a product yet, but a great idea. And it's how do I help you get to that next stage? So for one of them that I coached this year, we actually ended up coming up with a new way of getting money for him so that he could kind of take money from corporate social responsibility. So, the big companies, the Deloittes of this world go, we want to invest in something that's good for the world. And so we got him hooked into that so that he can now deploy his education solution to sub-Saharan Africa and kind of, really give a level of knowledge and insight and opportunity to a group of children who would never have that otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's the kind of thing that I'm proud of. These sort of moments where you go, do you know what? It was a small thing at the end of the day. It was literally an email between two people going, hey, you and you should talk because this works for both of you. But then seeing those relations come out and the impact, that's really stuff I'm proud of.
Yeah, for sure. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, Probably a pretty calm sort of advisory type, like um, without making this into a criminal drama, but in a Godfather world, I'd
Yeah.
probably be like Tom Hagen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So if anyone wants to reach out, hire you, learn more about you, any of the good business, where do they go?
There's A&H Consulting, which is the kind of the name of the business. It's me and my wife. We're running it together, which is all around technology and how do we kind of help you A, find out what you want to achieve for your business, and then B, how do we get the rest of your executive team to play along. Or just go to my LinkedIn profile and then I'm easy enough to find and reach from there.
Okay. Klaas, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your
That was
support.
great.
I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, great talking to you. Take care.